Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss a more complete response to a notion I saw in the comments section of a previous video. Boris Johnson famously dodged the trickier TV debates and interviews during the 2019 general election campaign, even hid in a fridge at one point. Rishi Sunak would probably like to do the same for exactly the same reasons, but I don't think he's going to be able to. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, Rishi Sunak, not really very good at holding his own in a cross-examination. And it doesn't even matter that against Keir Starmer he is up against someone who was basically knighted for being so good at cross-examining. Sunak is so bad that few would have problems exposing the chinks in his armour. Come the general election, both the Conservatives and Labour will have their campaigns carefully managed by a strategy team. Senior figures within each party will still make final decisions, of course, but they'll be paying a lot of money to be directed on the PR campaign by those experts. So Rishi Sunak will essentially be guided heavily by whomever the Conservatives get to marshal their forces. Unless Sunak makes some serious efforts to learn how to deal with difficult questions and go on the attack, the chief strategist is likely to view Sunak attending TV debates and searching interviews as a problem. It was the same with Boris Johnson. He couldn't hide from all of these events, of course, but he dodged a couple of TV interviews at least that I remember, and the interview with Andrew Neil. Basically, their risk management strategy pulled Johnson from the riskiest events without making it too obvious he was dodging scrutiny. Came up with lots of excuses why he couldn't make these things, of course. And this is because Boris Johnson is also useless in debates. So given that the basic circumstances are fairly similar up to now, would the strategy be the same? And will Sunak at least avoid what are seen as the riskiest events when the next general election campaign gets underway? Well, I'm sure the strategist would consider carefully the risks of attendance and non-attendance in each case. It won't be as straightforward as with Sunak. Back in 2019, the Conservatives held a polling lead over Labour throughout the campaign. In fact, the final poll before the election was as tight as it ever got, with the Conservatives having a 9-point lead. At one point, they had a 17-point lead. On the leadership front, Boris Johnson began the campaign with a 22-point lead over Jeremy Corbyn. So in terms of party and leadership polling, the Conservatives and Johnson were comfortably ahead. In other words, they had already won the election. They just had to make sure they didn't lose it in the campaign. They were playing a defensive game throughout, which can tilt your tactics more towards the safe non-engagement that saw Johnson avoid some interviews and debates. It was easier to judge that it would be better for Johnson to be accused of avoiding scrutiny than it was to let him open his mouth more than necessary. This, I think, will be the big difference in approach when Rishi Sunak takes his party into the general election. Of course, I can't know what the polls are going to look like then, but it is difficult to imagine that Labour will not have at least as strong a lead as the Tories had in 2019. And even that would be less than half the lead they've got now. 2023 is not the year when the Conservatives are going to spring back. It has the potential to be a very, very bruising time for the Conservative Party as their chickens come home to roost. And although there is evidence that Conservative voters who are currently unable to say that they would vote Conservative in polls will hold their nose in the election, they will absolutely gather more support. Labour's campaign is also likely to attract those who just want the nightmare of a Conservative government to end. So Sunak is almost certainly going to find out, that his party's behind in the polls, that he is behind in the leadership head-to-head. At the moment, he's trying to claim that he's somehow not involved in the mess so far. He brought out a party political broadcast in which he described himself as having been brought in to deal with, what was it, he called them challengers. He was alluding to the mess that Liz Truss made. But he was trying to say he was brought in to deal with it, and he's dealt with it. But with the exception of a period of a few months over summer, he has been either the Chancellor or the Prime Minister for the last 3 years. He is attempting to paint himself as like the new guy who should get a clean slate. This will be impossible come the election, though. He's trying it now because it might work in the moment, but it's not going to work for the election. Should be impossible now, quite frankly. But come the election, he'll have been Chancellor, followed by Prime Minister for basically the best part of 5 years. So he's going to be behind in the polls. Staying away from debates and interviews to limit the damage is one thing, but it also means he loses the opportunity to make appeals to the public. You know, being accused of running scared will also bite harder. When the accusation was levelled at Johnson, it was perfectly valid, but because he was ahead in the polls, he could just dismiss it. He could say, well, no, I'm turning up to other interviews and I'm turning up to other debates. I just happen to be busy on those particular days. Not my fault. We've got a campaign to run, you know. Sunak will not get away with that. You know, the strategists he employs will need to work out how best to manage a situation where their client begins the campaign in a losing position. You know, they will be paid to improve the Tories' chances. They're not being paid millions of pounds to just make it even worse. And they're going to have to use Rishi Sunak. He is the main figurehead of the campaign. And they need to work out a way to turn him into an asset. That is not going to happen by hiding. You know, he's not going to achieve an improvement in their polling position by hiding away. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.